know it or not, you've got to cook with 2 pieces of lamb, I believe. One of them being the neck fillet off the shoulder, and one being a rack of lamb from the best end. So I brought in a whole shoulder just to show you a bit of boning. But really what we're after is these 2 eye of the meats that go down to the neck there. That's the place that we're after, the neck fillet. So but I'll just show just a little bit of butchery on that. And this is, it's a part butchered, best ended lamb, which we're going to turn into a French trim rack. So if we do that first, there's a little put there, whether you just want to have a quick look. Yeah, that's the cut of meat we're using there. Which is your best end neck, the short loin. So that's like half of the saddle, so half of the back of the animal. This is the price, what everyone wants to use, French trim racks. Some of them use, some you've used them, Cav, some other people want to use them. So I'll just start off. So basically, this has been sawed at our butchery, and it's only so I didn't have to bring the saw. But basically, what you would do is what you call chining. So you've just got a saw in here, trying not to cut into the eye of the meat. So we've just done that, and then all we're going to do then is, like with all boning, is what you're trying to do is follow the bone. So you don't go far wrong if you just do short little movements, and just force your knife into the bone but slightly sideways. So obviously cutting down it. And then at the top of the bone here we've got the backbone. So if I was to put my knife in there, the spine bone, so all I want to do is just find where the bone is and then run my knife. These are flexible boning knives, so you can see that's all it is. So all I did was just follow around the backbone. So there again, and with it being such an expensive piece of meat, you don't really want to slash this meat, otherwise your head chef or whatever won't be too happy with you. So there again, all I am just pushing off that bone, pushing off. So we end up, that's your spinal cord, your spinal vertebrae. And what you get there is, you've got to trim this out now. What you get is, see this yellow, you'll all know that as collagen or elastin. So that's got to come out because that is inedible. That's what they use off the beef for dog chews. We call it in the butchery, its name is paddywhack, but it is really collagen or elastin. So that all has to come out, otherwise you've got this lovely bit of meat and that's going to ruin it. So we just take those tough bits off, and that's what we call the scrap, which I've just removed there. There's a little bit more there, you can just see it, that yellowing. So we just take that out. Then we've got the shoulder blade. When you look at a rack of lamb, most chefs are told that it's an 8-bone rack, but we cut a 7-bone rack. The reason being is because if you cut an 8-bone, you're taking one more bone of the shoulder. I'll show you why in a minute. And what you get then is one side of the rack of lamb that's got a lot more shoulder in it, which nowadays people don't like to see that fattiness as much, especially in a prize bit of meat. So we tend to cut a 7-bone, which will be in between the 6th and 7th bone of the shoulder. Looking at that there's the eye of the meat. So what you want to do is mark it. So I've taken that shoulder blade out. For a rack of lamb, you want to be just up from the eye there. So you would mark it there, and then up again from this side of the eye there, to just get that even, and then draw a line across that. Just check again that you've got it right. And then what we're going to do is push that knife really tight onto that bone. And we're just taking this piece off. And that's just a bit of the end of the brisket, really, just the far end of the brisket, which we would use for mince. And then it's just a question of in straight and up, always pushing tight on the bone. But obviously, if you're not wearing a glove or anything, you've just got to be careful that you're not going to push that hard. It's going to slip and cut off. So there again, just down the bone, down on that one, and then cut a straight line across. And then if anyone's done one of these before, obviously in a kitchen, you're going to scrape that off to make that a cleaner job. But if you do this carefully at first, pay attention to the bone, you won't have half a job of cleaning it up afterwards. So there we've got our 7-bone rack. Most chefs now will just go over that bone, trying to peel it off on its skin. You don't actually do this as butchers. This would be there, so this generally all these would come just like what you saw, but then you would have to scrape these bones clean. And after you've done scrape these clean, I don't know whether you go over them with a green scourer after as well, just to make sure they're It's been a while since I've done this, so you'll have to bear with me. But definitely for the Chef of the Year competition, this will be a must, I would say, to get the maximum points for preparation. And does anybody know the reason why we're taking all this off? From a chef's point of view? Yeah, it does. It burns on the bone and therefore looks unsightly. You can see what I'm trying to get from there. That just needs a little bit of finishing. That's it. Like I say, some people use the green scourer. A lot of that will just pull off. I have seen it done with the cheese wire before. Someone wants to try that. So there we've got our 7-bone rack. The other important thing for high-end dining is on the top of the lamb on all this is the skin. Never used to want to come off, but now the trend is towards this. It's what we call the bark. It can be tricky to take off, but most top places now will want that taken off, because what that does is when you cook, you can see it's quite plasticky, so what it's going to do is when you cook with the bark on, if you were going to put a crust over this or a marinade, now it's got time, it can get through, because if you look at this, it's almost like cling film, so now things can penetrate that, but also it won't contract as much when it hits a hot pan. So it's quite important, you know, if you want the best, that's what it's got to be. So there we have it. You know, most people use a 4-bone rack of lamb or 2, but just to show you, would trim this end off. This being the shoulder end, you can see there, it doesn't look as clean as this end, and this is the prize that everyone wants on this side really. So that would be a trim. So most people use a 3 or a 4-bone, but as you can see, what I normally sell into a customer, that's why we cut 7 bones. If I was to cut this now, that 3-bone is as big as this 4-bone, and then so you get those irregular sizes. So if I was a chef again now on the road, what I would do is probably order 7-bone racks of lamb and cut them myself, because butchers tend to just say, if you want 3 bones, they'll just cut it. They're not looking at it as a chef's perception of how you want that to look on a plate. So that's just a tip from me. So there we've got 2 racks of lamb there. Do you want me to do the other one, Tony, or do you want me to go on the shoulder?
No, just the shoulder.
Yeah?